Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, the pastor of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church, right here in sunny Southern California, in Santa Clarita in particular. And glad to have you with us today. If you are out and about in the city, you no doubt notice that it is warming up. We're finally getting out of the doldrums of that long winter we've had, and it's feeling really good out there. I think it's about 88 degrees when I pulled into the studio today, so we're finally getting into the temperatures that we in Southern California are, well, apt and used to. So we do have a guest today. We're going to get to Eric in just a minute here, but Eric Early is running for U.S. Senate, and so we're going to introduce Eric in just a minute, but real quickly I wanted to put a couple things in your ear before we get to Eric. Last week I mentioned this bill, an assembly bill called Assembly Bill 315, and this is going to go into Appropriations Committee sometime the early part of May, I think May 3rd or 4th. And the whole point of AB 315 is targeting pro-life pregnancy centers. Obviously, we have a pro-life pregnancy center right here in Santa Clarita, which of course I support. And I think most pro-life people support pregnancy centers. We do know that many pregnancy centers were targets by a bunch of anti-pro-life demonstrators over the course of the last year, especially since Roe was overturned early last year. And so this is just another nail in the coffin for pro-life pregnancy centers. The whole point of this particular bill, again, AB 315, is to essentially silence a lot of these pregnancy centers by effectively legislating and regulating them out of existence. And of course, they're definitely going to be using terms like misinformation in abundance with this bill, AB 315. You say, what can you do? Well, I would call my state legislature, I would call my state assemblywoman or assemblyman. I would write letters, I would email, I would do what I needed to do to make sure that this did not come out of the Appropriations Committee, and that if it does, it comes out bloodied and battered. So again, get out there, do something, be assertive, don't be a coward. AB 315, targeting pro-life pregnancy centers. You need to be on the offense on this, so please do so and don't sit on the sidelines. Well, if you've lived in California for any time at all, you're probably longing for a Republican in the Senate seat. We've had Democrats in control here in our state for a great many years, 30 years at least for the Senate seat in which our guest is vying for. And just the other day, we heard the news that former Mayor Richard Riordan passed away in Los Angeles. His last year in office as mayor was 2001. That means that Los Angeles City has been under full Democratic control since 2002, and obviously you can see the results of that today. The Senate seat that our guest today is running for has been in the firm hands of Dianne Feinstein, who obviously is not in the Senate at the moment, who is, according to the reports, suffering from shingles and all the rigors that goes along with being 89 years old. And the reports are as she's going to try to fulfill her term all the way through the end of 2024. But Eric Early, of course, jumped into the race a little over a week and a half ago. You can listen to Eric right here in Southern California. He is a husband, a father, attorney, a businessman, and son of a Marine, and he is not a career politician. Some of you might remember that Eric ran against Adam Schiff in 2020, and Eric also ran for California District Attorney in 2022, and might I add, was narrowly beaten out in the primary by Nathan Hochman. Full disclosure, I voted for Eric Early during the primary. And now Eric is, at least as of today, the sole Republican with reputation to replace the Senate seat held by Dianne Feinstein for the last 30 years. By the way, a Senate seat that was previously held by Republican John Seymour. So it is possible to see a Republican in the Senate again here in California. The question is, can we regain that seat? And is Eric Early the man to do it? Eric Early, welcome to Politics in the Pulpit. Say hello.
Jerry, thanks for the great introduction. It's great to be with you today.
Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself and more importantly, why are you running for this seat?
Well, I run for the seat, Jerry, and I ran for that other seat, and thank you so much for your support in that other one. I might add that the so-called Republican I ran for in that race, so I ran against, so I thought was said all the way along was a Democrat. Right after the race was over, he switched to independent. So he's well on his way to where he belongs, which is Democrat. But,
exactly.
Listen, bottom line, I do this because I love this country very much. I believe America is the greatest country in human history. I believe it is the last best hope for mankind on earth. And I believe, in fact, I know that we are under attack both domestically from domestic enemies who have made their way. They've broken through the gates. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And internationally. And but I don't need this in my life. My wife and my wife's a registered nurse. She grew up on Navy bases. We have 4 kids, 3 dogs, and a cat. Now we have a turtle because she bought one last week. And, I run a great law firm, a nationally recognized law firm, about 25 lawyers. We practice in courts all around California, all around the nation. I have incredible clients. So I could live a really great life without getting into this politics. But I am so concerned about what is happening to our country, and I firmly believe that people who have succeeded in the private sector must step up and do what we can to get this great country back. So that's why I run.
Well, let me ask you this question, Eric, and I think most people would want to ask you this question as well if you haven't heard it already as you've been traveling around. But is California really salvageable? I mean, you've seen so many people bleed out of our state into other states like Idaho and Florida and other what they would call free states, and they're fleeing the state of California, which I believe is indeed a wonderful state. I was born here. I was raised here. I've pastored here for 21 years. I have no desire to leave. But is California salvageable in your opinion? And how long do you think it would take to make California golden again?
Great question. First of all, as for the people that have left, and many of us know great people who have moved out, and we all understand why they've moved out.
Yeah.
But I've been out here 40 years, moved here long ago, and I absolutely believe it is salvageable. I wouldn't do this if I didn't believe it was salvageable. When I was running for Attorney General, for example, I traveled up and down this state. I spoke to thousands and thousands of great Californians from the north to the south, from the east to the west, and I firmly believe we have millions of Californians in this state who know how bad things are and want to see a change. And thanks to, so many in the mainstream media, most of us don't get to hear about those people. But they're out there, and that's why I say, Jerry, I am running for all the forgotten Californians. And that crosses, I'm a Republican, but that crosses party lines, that crosses racial lines. There are millions of us who see it, who know what's going on, who know how bad things are in this state, and are ready for a change. And you said it, the last Republican had this job was in the 1980s. Well, that's one of the perfect examples of or reasons why the state's in a shambles right now. So, yes, I absolutely believe it's salvageable.
And I guess the follow-up question would be, if it is salvageable, and I believe you, Eric, I think it is salvageable. I haven't given up on our state. How long do you think it would take to kind of turn this state around? Because obviously it's taken a while for it to turn into the heap that it's in right now politically, as well as the way it seems around the state, especially in some of our inner cities. How long do you think it would take if Eric Early were to win this Senate seat and a bunch of others would kind of join in with you in the Congress and State Assembly level? How long do you think it would take to turn this state around and make it golden again?
I tell you, Eric Early gets in this Senate seat, we will start turning things around immediately. Yes, to right the wrongs and correct the damage that has been done for decades, that will take time. But first of all, I get this seat, that will be a shot across the bow for the entire state and, frankly, for the entire country to realize that this far-left takeover that's been going on in this state does not have the support that we've been led to believe it does. Mm-hmm. And there are so many things that we would be doing right away, but just the statement it would make for the people that, yes, things have gotten so bad, it is time for a change, and it's time to get more conservative elected officials in this state again, for all the reasons that we can talk about and all the reasons that we know of. It would have a huge impact, and I believe that the changes would start, for the better, would start immediately.
You know, I know that you, Eric, have probably read the trend lines here in California, as I have, and you know as well as I do the Democrats are outpacing Republicans, 2-1, 3-1, depending on what polls and what averages you read. But how do you plan on appealing, Eric, to independents, which of course you're going to need to have, sane Democrats, which there are a few of them, because I know a few of them, and at the same time maintain that Republican base that is tenaciously kind of has some moderates in there, but then more Trumpian type guys. How do you swing that?
Well, as I said, I'm running for all forgotten Californians, and I'm one of them.
Yeah. And
we are of every party. We are Republicans. We are Democrats. We are independents. We are libertarians, and we see what's going on. For example, I'm a huge supporter of our parents and our children.
Yeah.
And I don't care what party you're registered with. There is no doubt that most parents do not want to be shut out of what is going on in their kids' education.
Yeah.
That most parents do not support the present law in the state of California that prevents teachers and school administrators from telling parents about serious matters that are happening with their minor children in school.
Yeah.
That most parents across party lines want to be able to see their child's school curriculum and their school reading list. Every one of my opponents are against all of those things. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that most parents in this state and most people in this state do not want people born as boys to be competing in their daughter sports and to be competing in women's sports. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that most people in the state want somebody who's going to be tough on crime to protect all of us. Everything I talk about goes across party lines and racial lines and socioeconomic lines. And most people right now see what's going on, and they're saying things have gone too far. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. Most people, I don't include the far left in what I'm saying, because to me, they are out to lunch.
Yeah.
But most rational, common sense people, regardless of how they're registered to vote, know that things have gone too far. And as I always say, Jerry, I don't have anything against the way somebody is registered to vote. My problem is with these elected officials in this state and in blue states and in D.C. They call themselves Democrats. They're really socialists at best, American Marxists also, and they have left the Democrat Party behind, and the only reason they still keep the Democrat Party name is because they know if they ran as the American Socialist Party, then millions of Democrats who just normally vote for Democrats would never vote for these people. So, my message goes across party lines. I am fighting for all Americans. And I do believe that message will resonate. And frankly, my biggest obstacle is much of the mainstream media that knows that I'm a threat and will do everything they can not to let this message get out there, but we'll get it out there.
Well, I'm praying and hoping that you do, Eric. And let me ask you about the Republican Party here in California. As you know, obviously, many Republicans here in California feel disillusioned. They felt like, even though technically in 2022, during the midterms, we did make some incremental changes here that were actually very good and very positive. The same thing could be said for New York State, which is also a deep blue state. But how does Eric Early's team plan to galvanize an already disillusioned Republican Party here in California? How do we somehow breathe life back into this Republican Party and say, hey, listen, we can win this Senate seat, and Eric Early's the man to do it?
It's a great question. One of the ways how is just what I said right before you asked the question, but also, I know the Republican Party really around this state. I when I ran for Attorney General last race, I was the candidate of the grassroots, the great grassroots in California, the more conservative side of the state Republican Party, the more Trump-esque side of the Republican Party, and I love the grassroots of our party. I really do. And there's a lot of concern about what you would call the mainstream of the party. There really is a split between the party, and I know the folks that run this party as well. And I got to tell you, we have enough of a battle going against these far left in this state that we should not be spending as much time as we've spent the last few years within the Republican Party, this sort of circular firing squad that's been going on. And I am going to do my best to try and bring together the two factions within the party as much as I can. It's a difficult task. I understand the concerns of the grassroots tremendously, but we have to do it. And frankly, there are very few people that have the ability to possibly do that. It's not going to be easy, but I'm one of those few.
I believe that, Eric, and I wonder if I can have you hold over for like 5 or 6 minutes after the break. Is that possible, Eric?
Jerry, I'll talk to you as long as you want to have me.
Great. I got a few more questions here that I want to ask, plus I had a few people text me because I want to be able to make sure some of our listeners can get a question in as well. So thank you very much, Eric, for joining us. If you're just tuning in, Eric Early, who is running for the Senate seat here in California, the one that currently Dianne Feinstein is not occupying, but is yet occupying, if you get my drift. Eric is running, as of right now, the only viable Republican running for that seat. When we come back, we're going to ask Eric a little bit about what his plan is for the churches in California. What about the evangelical community, and how will he try to galvanize that vote as well? When you come back here on Hometown Station on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll see you in just a second. We're back live here on Politics in the Pulpit with your Holy Host, Pastor Jerry Cook, on AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Senate hopeful Eric Early, who's running for the Republican side for displacing Dianne Feinstein from the Senate seat, which she's held for 30 years. And wanted to talk and ask Eric a few more questions before we lose him today, but we're so glad to have you on the program. And let me ask you, Eric, where does Eric stand on the issue of abortion? Obviously, ever since the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision last year, the Democrats think they have some sort of way of being divisive here and trying to split off some of the more moderate Republicans from what I would consider the more tried and true pro-life Republicans. Where does Eric Early stand on the issue of abortion?
Well, Jerry, I'm pro-life, and I support the Dobbs decision. The Dobbs decision was exactly right on the law and on the facts, and I'm pro-life, and yes, we know what the far left in this state are going to do with the fact that I'm a pro-life candidate, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and we'll deal with it.
I was having a discussion with somebody here at the station just before the show today, and they were, kind of a little concerned about, what the Democrats' plan is into 2024 and using this Dobbs decision to their advantage. And I just simply said, I just think Republicans need to highlight just how out of touch and how really disgusting the position is on abortion on their end. I mean, for instance, the Born Alive bill, which, if a woman's having abortion and the abortion is not successful and the child is actually born alive, there are Democrats that will not even support that bill. They actually would want to see the child just die, just leave the child laying there on a sterile environment and just let it die on its own. I mean, I think that stuff needs to be brought up and made very clear to the electorate, because I'm sure there are some sane Kennedy-esque Democrats out there that are still vying for the nostalgia of 50 years ago that can't stomach that in the mainline Democratic Party. What say you, Eric?
Well, certainly. I mean, that kind of thing that you just described is unspeakable. Frankly, when I heard that there were actually legislators supporting that, I did a double take, because I didn't believe that anybody could support such a thing. But that's one of the things we're dealing with out there, Jerry. I describe our state legislature as the Politburo, okay? North Korea's legislature is called the Politburo.
Yeah.
Communist China's legislature is called the Politburo. The Soviet Union, they called their legislature the Politburo.
Yeah.
Here we have some great Republicans up there in Sacramento, but as you know, we have a supermajority of Democrats, so it's been one-party rule up there. Which, supermajority prevents any Republican bill, anything from getting through, and everything these far left that call themselves Democrats, and as I said, they've hijacked the name Democrat. They're much worse than what even Democrats were a few years ago.
Sure.
Anything they want through, they get through, and then you have this disgusting governor who just signs off on it. So, it's very dangerous times here in our state, and another thing I'm fighting for is not just for me to be U.S. Senator, but I will do my best to educate people in California as to why it is so important for people to vote for state assembly and state senatorial candidates that are not Democrats. They have to they have to understand how they're, even if they're Democrat voters, how they have been voting against their own best interests for years now.
Yeah, I feel the same way when I saw the results of the election in Chicago a few weeks ago, and I thought to myself, great, they got rid of Lori Lightfoot, but then they stepped in it even deeper with this Brandon Johnson guy, and I just said to myself, here are a bunch of inner city folks who have clearly voted against their best interests with Lori Lightfoot and then stepped in it double with this guy.
I'll tell you, that was shocking. In the lead up to that, first of all, it was great to see that Lori Lightfoot did not even get through the primary because she is terrible.
Sure.
And so, and then there were two candidates, and the more conservative guy was leading in the polls. So I went to bed that night thinking, great, they're going to finally start, reversing the badness that's been going on in Chicago. I wake up, and the other guy won, and it is so bad. He's pro-criminal. He's pro-everything that must be stopped to bring a normal, decent, sane, and safe life to all the citizens of his city. And, I've been reading up on it more since that election, and apparently it was the public employees unions in Illinois that carried the day and helped that person who won the race carry the day. And I'll tell you, it's a huge problem apparently there in Illinois, and certainly a huge problem, these public employees unions right here in California, because they are incredibly powerful. They are bought and paid for by our taxpayer dollars, and in return they own the public elected officials, the Democrat elected officials in this state.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about your running technique here, Eric, because I'm friends and have the privilege of knowing our congressman here for the district, Congressman Mike Garcia, and have the privilege of knowing him before he ran, when he was still with Raytheon. And one of the things that he decided to do was, hey, I'm going to visit all of the, Orthodox Bible-believing churches, evangelical churches here in the district, and really galvanize that evangelical vote, which, of course, I believe has helped him to get over the hump in each one of these elections. What is your plan in terms of visiting evangelical churches across the state, and do you even think that we can get those evangelicals to turn out in numbers for Eric Early?
I would love to speak to every single evangelical church that will have me. Folks can go to ericearly.com. There's ways to communicate with us on the website. I think it would be great to do that. I always like speaking to congregations in houses of worship. And as far as the great evangelical community, we have to get their support. We all know how powerful and the huge numbers of evangelicals we have in this state. And if the evangelicals would just join together as a voting bloc, Republicans would be back in power in this state. And, I had a great conversation along those lines with a very well-known pastor out here. I won't mention his name. I don't know if he wants it mentioned or not. And he said, Eric, this is one of his major focuses right now, is to galvanize the evangelical vote in California. And what he's running up against is, so many evangelicals are basically fatalists. They're saying, well, the end times are coming, so what's the point of voting?
Yeah.
Because it's all going to happen anyhow, right? And as he said, well, the end times could be 500 years from now. And right now, we have to take control of what we're dealing with right now. And that message makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
And so we have to do whatever we can to galvanize this incredible voting bloc, because we're still dealing with what we're dealing with right now, and we are fighting very bad forces, evil forces in this state right now. And we have so many great people in the evangelical community who certainly support my messages and the conservative messages, and we have to galvanize that block again.
No, I agree with you, and without naming said pastor that you spoke to, I think I might have an idea who it is, because I just spoke with several big-name pastors here in California, and we all have the same notion, which is, except for our respective churches, obviously, but in the broader context, there is this fatalistic / bunker mentality where Christians are just kind of saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and, we're going to do our own food, can our own vegetables, can our own jam, and we're going to go find a bunker somewhere and wait for the Lord to return. I mean, I don't have an issue with waiting for the Lord to return. What I have an issue with is not doing anything before He returns. And that's my big issue with a lot of the Christian community today, is they just seem to be very apathetic. They're not pushing against the culture. They're allowing the culture to run up against them and steamroll on them. And this is why you've got a bunch of disillusioned evangelicals. And the other thing, too, Eric, and this again from the heart of a pastor here, having observed churches over the last 21 years and longer, is, this whole woke mentality, it has infiltrated our churches as well. And that's why I kind of qualified saying, are you going to visit these Bible-believing churches, these Orthodox churches? Because there are a lot of churches out there that are very woke.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I agree with everything you just said. And I would, like I said, any Orthodox evangelical church that will have me speak, I will be there. EricEarly.com. There are ways to contact us. Let's set it up. I very much want to go there. I'm very much aware of how the woke are infiltrating every single institution in our country, whether they're the major government institutions or the private institutions, the religious institutions, the schools, of course, and they're like zombies, these woke, and I have no doubt where it's come from. Frankly, I brought the first lawsuit in the country about 6-7 years ago up in Santa Barbara. I led a great group of brave parents, first lawsuit in the country against critical race theory. At the time, none of us had ever heard of it. I had never heard of it.
Yeah.
And these woke are products of a massive brainwashing apparatus going on in our schools, public, many private schools now as well. Starts in kindergarten. By the time they come out the other end, whether it's high school or college, so many of them, their brains are shot.
Yeah.
And the brainwashing is palpable. And that is what we're dealing with, and that is where this woke mind virus, this woke generation has come from, and we have to be strong enough. We have to have the courage of our convictions. We have to be brave, and we will win this battle of, frankly, good versus evil. But it's not going to be won by people sticking their heads in the sand and hoping it's all going to go away.
Yeah, with the last couple minutes that we have here, Eric, I wanted to ask a couple more questions here. First of all, will there be debates with your Democratic opponents, and if so, have you heard any dates set or anything like that?
Well, I haven't heard anything about it. I would love to debate them. I was on a kind of a well-known show here in the L.A. County region about a week ago. Alex Michelson, he does a lot of political stuff, and I said at the end, Alex, I'd love to debate these people. Why don't you sponsor it? He said, I will always try to do that, because that is something he does try to do. Just for your listeners, I'm running against 3 very bad people. There's the pathological sicko named Adam Schiff, who as you mentioned earlier, I ran against 2 election cycles ago. I beat 7 people in the primary on that one. I ended up in the top 2 against Schiff, and it was just me versus him during the entire time he was going after President Trump. So I'm running against him. I'm running against a woman who proudly calls herself a progressive named Katie Porter. Mm-hmm. And the word progressive in English means communist. And she wouldn't say that, of course. And then there's another one, even farther left than perhaps those other 2, named Barbara Lee from Oakland. And frankly, if she doesn't have a picture of Fidel Castro hanging in her living room, I'd be shocked. So
Yeah.
this is what we're running against, and this race can be won, and I need everybody's support. EricEarly.com.
That's right. And one last unimportant question, Eric, but what does Eric Early like to do for fun?
That's well,
When Eric
I'd
Early's
like
not
to-
running for anything, or if Eric Early's not doing anything in politics, what does Eric Early like to do?
I like to take road trips with my beautiful wife. I like to go on hikes with her. I like to walk our English bulldog together, and I like to spend time with my family. And every once in a while, I get a chance to travel, and to farther reaches. And those are the kind of things that I very much like to do. And I like going out to a good meal here and there.
Well, that's great. Again, how can folks read up about you, volunteer, and or donate to your campaign? One last time, Eric.
EricEarly.com, EricEarly.com. We can win this race, and we can start doing what's necessary to bring really sanity back to our once and future great state of California.
Well, Godspeed to you, Eric Early, and we'll be in contact for an attempt to get you at our church, and then maybe get you at some others as well. And thank you very much, Eric, for calling in today, and we will do our best to see if Eric Early can win this Senate seat.
Thanks again for having me, Jerry.
All right, take care, sir. If you're just listening into Politics in the Pulpit, you are listening to Pastor Jerry Cook. We just had Eric Early on, who is running for U.S. Senate. And again, EricEarly.com is where you need to go to volunteer or donate to his campaign. If you're listening today and you're part of a church here in Santa Clarita or wherever you might be, talk to your pastor, your elder board, your deacons, and see if you can get Eric in to speak to your Sunday school or to your adult class or to your congregation if your pastor will allow that. And of course, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to endorse him, but it just gives you an opportunity to meet Eric. And I would encourage churches to do that. I mean, obviously, no one has to be endorsed from the pulpit. I'm not necessarily suggesting you do that because, people are scared to death of the Johnson Amendment in 1965. But the fact is, we need to have these guys in. We need to be able to have them exposed to our congregations, and they need to be filtered through Bible-believing preachers just as much as the lamestream media and the right-wing media as well. And so get out there and look up these candidates, get behind their campaigns if you can. Read everything you can about them, pro and con. Make sure you get an opportunity to speak to them as well, because we are ramping up in the 2024 season right now. The cycle of running has begun. If you are listening today, you probably heard that Asa Hutchinson also threw his hat in the ring for president. Some of you are probably saying to yourself, who in the world is Asa Hutchinson? Well, he's had a pretty long career in the government. He was in Congress, and I believe that ran the state of Arkansas for 2 terms as governor. But he's got absolutely zero chance, much like Chris Christie, of winning the Republican primary in the current interim of the Republican Party today. He's just kind of a passé politician from years gone by, and so I just don't think a guy like him is going to win. But I do have hope for a guy like Eric Early, especially for U.S. Senate here in California. So take a look at his website. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the insanity going on in the state of Minnesota and this thing called MAPS. What is that about? When we return here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here live with Politics in the Pulpit. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. Thanks for tuning in today on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We just concluded an interview with Eric Early, Senate hopeful for Dianne Feinstein's Democratic Senate seat that she has held for 30 years, since 1992. And again, give EricEarly.com a look and see if you can support him. What if I told you that the transgender issue is just about to run its course, and the next issue that we are going to be dealing with is the acceptance or the normalizing of pedophilia. I know you probably thought 10 years ago that the transgender issue would never be normalized, and many of you 30 years ago never thought that the homosexual issues would be normalized. But here we are in 2023. I feel like we're coming to the crescendo of the transgender episode, and I think the next thing that is coming down the pike is something called MAPS. MAPS. Minor Attracted Persons. You say, what state would even try to normalize this? Well, it's not California, but I'm sure we won't be far behind. It is the grand state of Minnesota. So here in Minnesota, not here in Minnesota, but in the state of Minnesota, there is a law that is winding its way through the legislature that seems likely to pass that will, in effect, make pedophilia a sexual orientation and hence make pedophilia a protected class, much like gay, lesbian, and the like. It is being backed by a transgender legislature named Leah Fink, but she, and of course she is in air quotes, has 16 other authors to the bill, and it has already been heard in committee and is ready to go to the floor should the Speaker accept it. It could also make it into an omnibus bill, which of course I'm sure the Democrats would love to lump it in there without much fanfare, so it would just get passed and then we would just have to accept this. Now, this provision does not, quote, legalize pedophilia yet, but it does normalize it, giving it the same status of being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or what have you. Should it pass, being a pedophile, at least in the state of Minnesota, and if it gets wrapped up in an omnibus bill, who knows, should it pass, it will give pedophilia protective status, and the rest will be history. And again, this is part of a real movement to normalize pedophilia that has institutional support. Now, I know, folks, you and I would have never guessed this ever, but this is exactly what is happening in our country. And my point is, if you think it's going to stop there, it is just going to get worse and worse and worse. If you want to know what the end result for America will be, just read Romans 1 on your own time, and you'll see how a reprobate mind can cause much damage and a decline of a nation. I don't know if you've heard this as well, but there was I think it's only being published in conservative sites right now, but I don't think any of the mainstream media has really publicized this, but I guess there was a surgery attempt by a bunch of witch doctors, aka regular doctors, and they were trying to make a vagina out of a man's colon. And in the process, the man died. Now, again, I don't want to get into all the details because they're relatively gory, but this is somebody that has undergone all of the, quote, gender-affirming care. That's the buzz phrase, the euphemism that is being used, gender-affirming care. And the way gender-affirming care is being sold by the left is it's just like, going and having your boobs done, ladies, or having, a nip and tuck and things like that. No. It's not cosmetic. Cosmetic can come back and you can take care of that. We're talking about lobbing off a boy's penis or closing a woman's vagina, or as this story suggests, making a vagina out of one's colon. This is truly sick, folks. And this is where we are in our Sodom and Gomorrah present United States of America. And we need guys, Lord willing, like Eric Early, to win that Senate seat and a bunch of other state seats and local seats here in California to begin to turn the tide here in the state of California. And let me just say one last thing. And Eric brought this up, and we talked about it briefly. Christians, you cannot stay in your bunker with your, your food that lasts for 30 years and just wait there for the Lord to return. I mean, if you've read your Bible as much as I have, Lord willing you have, you know the Bible says to occupy till I come. And there are some things that you need to do. You need to get engaged, and you need to be in earnest and do something while you're waiting. You can't just be locked up in your bunker. Next week, we will have with us on the program Lex Rex, Alexander Haberbush with the Lex Rex Institute. And also Brad Dacus might be calling in. I'm not terribly certain about that, but Brad will be calling in. I want to thank you very much for tuning in to Politics in the Pulpit today. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, signing off on your hometown station. We'll catch you next week.